Hour number 3 of the Green Mountain Mornings program underway at 16 minutes past the 8 o'clock hour on Friday, April the 28th. Joining us now on the phone from his compound in Dummerston is the deputy editor of The Commons, your reader-supported, award-winning independent news and views source for Windham County, Randy Holhut. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Chris. Good morning, everyone. Hi, Joyce.
Hi, Joyce. Thanks for tuning in to our conversation this morning. It was a week ago, Randy, that you and I were previewing the ribbon-cutting ceremony at the West Brattleboro Fire Station, and the next day, there we were, and a week later, here we are reflecting on it, because it was really, as you said in the headline of the Commons, decades in the making, and I don't know if you, when you talk about emergency services, if you want to say well worth the wait, but it certainly was a really nice facility.
Well, talking to the guys, they're like fighting amongst themselves to get a shift in the news station, because it's just such a huge improvement over the central station. You know, no soot on the walls, the air's quality's cleaner, no ceilings falling in, no musical chairs with having to move engines around to get at equipment. It's the station they've been dreaming of, and now they can't wait for the Central Station project to be finished so they can have the same thing downtown.
Right, yeah, I had a nice conversation with Assistant Chief Lenny Howard, and he would say the guys can't even believe it's their station. They feel like they're covering another community when they get to go to the West Beach Fire Station, so that's great. And he also pointed out recruiting tool. I think we overlook some of these projects, and I made the point at the time when I was a member of the representative town meeting why I was voting for the police fire facilities. I consider that an economic development measure. When people are looking to relocate to an area, whether a business or a family, you're looking at town services like police and fire. And
certainly for recruiting firefighters or police officers, it's having a safe, clean environment to work in is a plus. I'm sure that once the police station project's finished on Black Mountain Road, that Gunny will have no problem, at least with the working conditions part of the job, attracting new recruits.
Yeah. Were you surprised that as many people turned out for that ribbon cutting, the open house on Saturday morning as they did?
Well, I don't know. You put some coffee and bagels and donut holes out, and people will come no matter what it is.
I guess that's true.
But I think everyone likes firefighters. I mean,
yeah.
And we've never... The little kid in all of us loves fire trucks. Yes,
we do. And it was certainly something, as you said, decades in the making. I thought Kate O'Connor's remarks spoke to that very well. Peter Elwell doing a great job thanking everybody involved. So it certainly felt like an appropriate turnout. People who really have been advocating for this for a long, long time, getting a chance to actually see part one or phase one of the 3-part project go online.
Yes.
Now, Wendy Levy, you were just talking about the little kid and all this. Wendy Levy was especially excited about the rescue boat. I don't know. Did she talk to you about that?
She didn't talk to me about that, but I think she probably didn't realize that, that they have a boat and a dive team.
Yeah.
And, they're pretty, they get called on frequently, especially this time of year when people decide it's nice out and I'm going to go take my kayak and my canoe out and then tip it over and get into trouble.
Yeah. She was on the show Monday. She was so excited about the rescue boat, Randy. It was really kind of funny to have that conversation with her about doing that. And she had the byline on the story, and you were the photographer for that. Now, you were not downtown yesterday when the fires department was called to action at the Echo restaurant downtown and closed down all of Main Street. I guess it's probably a good thing. And maybe you had a day off there from having to go into the office?
No, just going in late, and it was out of email contact. And by the time I got there, hey, there was a big fire downtown, and as it turned out, not so much. But any building downtown, and all those buildings are, the newest of the buildings are 60 years old, and the older ones that are more than 100 years or 150 years old, you kind of worry about them catching fire and what happens. And the Brooks house is still fresh in everyone's mind. It's only been 6 years, but seared in everyone's brain of what could happen if one of these buildings went up, particularly the ones that don't have sprinkler systems in them.
And I got to say, for something that resulted in the shutting down of Lower Main Street, basically from Flat, was it all the way up to High Street? I want to say they'd closed it down. Looking at some of the footage people were shooting online, and happening, I guess right at the end of a morning commute, if you're talking about in that 8:30 to 8:45 time frame. Then they had it all cleared up within an hour and a half, and that's not to say that it wasn't a big deal. Because the fire wasn't a big deal, but it takes a while to bring all those rescue vehicles into one area and then get them out again. It seems like they did a pretty good job coordinating that.
Well, we've had some practice with other alarms on Main Street over the years. I seem to remember, somebody overcooking their turning on an oven in one of the apartments, and I guess above Zephyr in that block, right. that smoked up the building, and that tied up Main Street for a while. And just any little thing. There's no insulation in those buildings. I remember one of the firefighters saying you could drop a penny from the top floor and it would rattle all the way down to the bottom and not hit anything.
Now, it was a 3-alarm fire, and I think that's what, especially in this day and age of social media, when those sorts of messages are going out there, and Peter Elwell actually taking the time to contact the 2 radio stations here in town to let them know that the morning commute downtown would be affected. I guess talk a little about that abundance of caution of 3 alarms and bringing firefighters, I think, all the way over from Keene to assist with this. It doesn't seem like a disproportionate response to you, does it?
Well, it would. On the surface, it would seem like they're overreacting. But again, like I was saying a couple minutes ago, they're very old buildings, and not all of them are have sprinkler systems. I mean, the sprinkler system is what made the difference in the Brooks House fire that kept and fire alarms that kept the damage from being worse than it was, and no loss of life. And that's the kind of record the Brattleboro Fire Department would really want. I mean, think of the Wilder Block fire. That was a building that didn't have, as memory serves, didn't have a sprinkler system in it. And nobody died in that fire either. But it was really pretty scary. That one fire was.
Yeah.
And so when it's a downtown block and with businesses and apartments and the potential for a real disaster, erring on the side of caution isn't a bad thing.
No.
And the Brattleboro Fire Department prides itself on its professionalism and its training, and that they can handle this stuff.
Yeah. And a little bit of an inconvenience for a morning commute versus safely evacuating everybody who was an occupant of that building at that time of morning, and no casualties, no injuries. I think everybody will take that trade-off. Randy, we will take a break from talking to you and then be back to talk about more stories found in this week's edition of The Commons when we come back after the Bomb They Are news break. "60 degrees outside at 21 minutes before the 9 o'clock hour. Say 60 degrees outside. It feels like 75, 80 degrees in here. I don't know what's going on, but it's warm in here. I guess it's heating up outside too, right, Randy Holhut of The Commons?
Somewhat, but I wouldn't go overboard there.
Definitely not summertime. I'm telling you, in here, I'm schwitzing. It's kind of warm in here. I guess they still have the heat on, even though temperatures are warming up, and certainly a lot of things to do outside as we head into a weekend. But one more segment of the Green Mountain Mornings program with Randy Holhut, who is the deputy editor of your reader-supported, award-winning news and view source for Windham County, free on stands every Wednesday, online at commonsnews.org. That's the website where you can go and become a member. Get it mailed right to you in your mailbox like I do every Thursday. Appreciate that service as part of my membership at the Commons, and appreciate all the stories you guys cover each and every week, Randy. And we had a chance here on the Green Mountain Mornings program to visit with Margaret Atkinson and Chloe Leary, the executive directors of the Winston Prouty Center and Windham Child Care Association, about the merger that is going to take place at the end of June. Mike Fair having the story in this week's edition of The Commons. I get a feeling, reading some of the circumstances around it, we're going to see more of this in the nonprofit world in order for these organizations to survive.
Yes, because when you take a funding hit of the kind that the Windham Child Care Association took, that's when you have to reassess everything. And certainly losing the state contract was a big blow for their finances.
Yeah, 1/4 of their funding stream eliminated in one fell swoop. And certainly it almost feels like when you read some of the circumstances around how they're going to do this merger, I mean, it almost feels more like an absorption. It's not like they're creating a new organization here, but most everything that went on for Wyndham Childcare with regards to the training and some of the other programs they provide are going to live on, and it's just all going to be part of Winston Prouty Center now, right?
Yeah, and it's their missions are complementary, and there doesn't seem to be that there's going to be any diminution of what Wyndham Child Care Association has done, just with better financial backing behind it.
Yeah. It is different, though, than, say, the merger of the Brattleboro Area Drop-In Center and Morningside Shelter, where they actually created a new organization out of it. And I wonder culturally how different that's going to be for these two entities getting together versus the Groundworks Collaborative Organization and kind of having to all come together and say, hey, we're something new now. I guess actually there's probably an advantage. Everybody still knows Winston Prouty. People had to get used to this whole idea of what Groundworks Collaborative was.
Yeah, and it's not like they're creating something out of thin air with a name that doesn't really speak to what their mission.
Right. That's a very good point, because of the entire name for Winston Prouty is Winston Prouty Center for Child and Family Development. I think that's a key part of this when you're talking about taking on the Wyndham Child Care mission. The fact that they had to do this is the result of the state removing this contract, but also moving towards this Community College of Vermont programming. And to me, that speaks to they want more control over the results. I don't think Wyndham Child Care necessarily had a poor track record training people, and we know that we have a shortage of child care facilities, quality child care facilities, and child care providers in the state. I think that's an interesting move from the state's perspective. I didn't know if you had any thoughts about that.
Well, I do know that they were having some problems getting that program going, to the point where they're having to subcontract the Wyndham Child Care to keep the program going while CCV gets up to speed on it.
Right. So maybe they feel it's up to speed now, or maybe that contract will come back to Winston Prouty at some point. It's so hard to say. That's interesting. I didn't know that. Mergers certainly seem to be the theme of the issue for the Commons, because another front page story from Mike Fair having to do with some towns along the Green River possibly forming together, or definitely forming together. Is this Great River Watershed Alliance thing an entity now?
Yes.
It is. Okay, so talk a little bit about some of the circumstances around this merger of towns.
Well, Irene.
Right?
I mean, that's the main thing, Irene, and trying to deal with what happens if there's a future storm of that magnitude that causes flooding, and how to make the watershed able to withstand something like that.
Yeah, and we're talking about the towns, if people haven't seen the article yet, we're talking about Guilford, Halifax, and Marlborough, who all share properties along that Green River. And this is speaks to the power of having a regional entity like the Wyndham Regional Commission getting involved and having a blueprint for this already, right, up in the Saxtons River area.
Again, Irene,
right?
It was also help spur that on too. I mean, the idea that towns can't exist in their own little silos and apart from one another, that as resources get scarcer and the needs get larger than an individual town can handle, you're going to have to come together. You're going to have to build alliances and form collaborations to be able to do the things you need to have done.
Now, how much of this do you think falls on the municipalities themselves, the select boards, to collaborate versus needing participation from the community members? To me, this seems much more like a grassroots communities coming together than anything that the different select boards are going to have to do. Am I understanding that correctly?
That's correct.
Yeah.
This is something that is definitely outside of the town halls,
right?
And looking at various things that individual landowners along the river and other community groups can do to not just be ready for the next Irene to come along, but also to promote the area. Not that it needs that much promotion. I mean, among trout fishermen, they know the Green River is a pretty good stream to get your brookies in.
Yes, it is. I remember falling into that river quite a bit as a kid, slipping on the rocks as my father took me trout fishing there as a young lad. And to have, workshops for landowners in flood-prone areas, getting organizations like the Vermont Performance Lab in Guilford getting involved seems to me to be a great opportunity to shed more awareness on the beauty of that area. But I also got to wonder how much more this collaboration can be taken when you talk about some of those governments sharing resources on other issues like plowing and sanding roads. I got to think at some point when you talk about diminishing resources for these small towns, collaboration we're going to be seeing more of it in the future amongst the actual governments as well, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very much going to be something that needs to be done.
Yeah, it may not be something that needs to be done for a long period of time, but I think for the foreseeable future, we're going to see more and more alliances among these small communities. Not to say that they still won't stay their own communities, but certainly something for them to pay attention to. A nice story up in Putney for that small community with the general store getting, is this Putney General Store 3.0 now, or is it 4.0? It's been quite a few changes, unfortunately.
Well, the same store, except another group operating it. The pharmacy's gone, but with Jim Heal's death, that wasn't going to get revived again. So just trying to figure out things. Actually, our intrepid reporter Wendy was by there the other day because it's actually open, or they're softly opening it, and they're putting seating in the back overlooking the waterfalls.
Oh, nice. That's a nice change.
Waterfall.
Right.
Or you've probably heard of the old guys who hang out there. They call themselves a Viagra Club that meet there for coffee every morning.
I didn't know that they called themselves that.
So they have their little nook in the back overlooking the waterfall, and they call it Viagra Falls.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. Heaven forbid you sit at their table by mistake.
Well, they'd probably invite you along and,
yes.
and tell you to get off their lawn or something.
Now, you had Taryn He on writing the preview story for this, and thought she did a really good job of kind of talking about the meaning of these general stores to these communities. I mean, the fact that the Historical Society gets involved in a general store and makes sure it stays alive, stays vital in the community. I mean, to really speak that people understand that these really are the hearts of all these small communities, no matter what other changes happen around them.
Yeah, and there's a lot of other towns around the state that have gone to nonprofits to keep their general stores alive. But because between big box stores and chains and people living their lives outside of town and coming back to sleep pretty much.
Right.
It's tough to keep a general store in the traditional general store going unless you have a little help.
Yeah. And if the community values it, it's certainly something that we've seen work very well. Are you listening, Vernon? Sorry, I just had to throw that in there, editorialize for a second on my old community.
Yes, but it makes a difference of having Dummerston's a great town, but there's no community set focal point here except maybe the Grange and the at the four the four corners with the Grange and the town office and the Congregational Church, but it's not a daily thing. It's a special event thing like the Pie Fest or the Chicken Pie Suppers or something like that. Right.
Yeah, that's something that Dummerston, I'm sure a lot of people would avail themselves of if there was a general store to pick up a few things, pick up the paper and milk and eggs and whatever you need, and see some of your neighbors once in a while and have a brief conversation. That's really part of what makes living in Vermont special. Also, the local sports scene we have here, certainly special to have you covering this each and every week in the Commons. And you were at the Leland and Gray Bellows Falls baseball game last week, and sounds like Leland
freaking cold.
Freaking cold, and not the most fan-friendly game here when you're talking about a blowout. Was that a surprise that Leland Gray was that much better than Bellows Falls?
You mean Bellows Falls that much better than Leland Gray?
Oh, was it the other way around? Did I have this wrong?
Yeah.
Oh, my mistake.
No, it was. They just. It's It seems like April and Hadley Field and Leland Gray doesn't mix. I've just, I remember last year, actually, it was my first game back after getting out of the hospital. It was snowing and 37 degrees at the end of the game.
Oh, my gosh.
So this was, the only difference was it wasn't snowing. It was the same thing, a blowout by Bellows Falls that at least blessedly got done in 5 innings because of the mercy rule. But April baseball can be all kinds of surprises. I mean, I see like yesterday up in Twin Valley, up at Bakerfield and Wilmington, that they lost to Springfield 20-2.
Wow, 20-2. And I completely dyslexified that story. That's interesting. I wrote down on my sheet here that Leland and Gray rolls over Bellows Falls. There's nothing saying that. You have it absolutely right. There's nothing to lead me to be confused about that other than my own addled brain. But certainly nice to know that spring sports are underway. We've been covering some of the lacrosse matches out there, and that's been a lot of fun, although we've seen some blowouts there as well, as one does see in the early season. Like the one yesterday. That's right. Things that you'll be covering in the coming week here and that we can see in the next edition of the Comments, Randy.
Well, Phil Scott will be coming to town on Monday.
That's right.
For the chamber luncheon. So certainly a town where I guess he'll get a polite reception, but certainly not a town that he got a lot of support from.
Right. The business community is certainly going to be out in force there, and we'll see if other people come up. I'll be curious to see if anybody asks him questions about Act 46.
Oh.
and how he responds to that.
I think you can if you're having your Governor Scott bingo card, that would be the center square.
That would be the center square indeed. Well, I'm sure I'll see you there on Monday. Hope you have a great weekend. Thanks for your time this morning.
Thank you.
All right, Randy Holhut of The Commons, your reader-supported, award-winning independent news and views source for Windham County. Free on stands every Wednesday, online at commonsnews.org. We'll be back to wrap up this edition of Green Mountain Mornings right after these messages.